Howdy my totally as always tubular gamers, and we're back with, you guessed it, another ranking video. And today we're going to be talking some Assassin's Creed. We had the newly released Assassin's Creed Mirage, and before we get started I just want to give a shout out, a thanks to Ubisoft for providing me with the access to the game, so thank you very much. But yeah, Assassin's Creed. Now, Assassin's Creed at this point, I don't think it needs really much of an introduction. It's one of the most prolific game series of the last 15 years. Assassin's Creed's really been Ubisoft's flagship series. Their mascot, their icon has been the Assassins once it stopped being Rayman. You know Assassin's Creed, I know Assassin's Creed, let's move on. So Assassin's Creed, over the years has had a ton of different eras, as I like to call it. The original eras with Altair and Ezio, the Ezio trilogy, where the series' identity really got established, social stealth, hiding in crowds, taking people out, and a real-life modern-day story with Desmond Miles. And then we have the second era of Assassin's Creed, which was after Ezio, where Desmond dies off. It's about America, and there's pirates, and then eventually there was Unity with the co-op and Syndicate, where it's a totally different environment from before. And then we have the third era of Assassin's Creed, what I like to call the modern Assassin's Creed games. You see, after Syndicate, there was a little break. The annual releases stopped, and then we got Assassin's Creed Origins, which was a much more RPG-focused adventure, similar to actually Witcher more than anything else. And then we would get Odyssey and Valhalla, which very much followed the trend of Origins. And finally, we have the latest title, Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now, Mirage is looking to break the trend of Origins and Odyssey and Valhalla and try to be a throwback to those original games, but you know what? I'm going to still say this is in the modern Assassin's Creed era. If you want to talk about modern Assassin's Creed games, I think it starts with Origin and on. And that's what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about the modern Assassin's Creed games. I am working on another video where I look at every single Assassin's Creed game, but that's going to take a hot minute because there's a lot of those games. But today, we're talking about just Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla, and now Mirage. We're going to be ranking these games worst to best, giving each one of them a little review, seeing how they stack up against each other. What's the best? What's the worst? What's got the best stealth? Which is the grindiest? Which has the most egregious microtransactions? We're looking at everything here. So, you know how these videos go. Let me know how you're feeling down below. Like, share, comment, subscribe. We got the super thanks and the Patreon going as well. Everything is appreciated. Let's just get right into it now. Of these four games, which do I think is the weakest? And here we have Assassin's Creed Odyssey releasing in 2018. Now, I got this game shortly after it came out, and I spent a lot of time with it, played all the way through it, and I love Assassin's Creed, but after looking back at all the time I spent with this game, was it worth it? Was it an amazing time? No, not really. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is one of those games that I think is a really, and I mean really, mixed bag. I made a video a couple years ago that's like 30 or 40 minutes long complaining about this game, and all these years later, yeah, it's still just a really mixed bag. So this Assassin's Creed takes place during Greek mythology. It takes place during the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. You get to choose between two different characters at the start, but if you don't choose Cassandra, I just don't know what you're doing. Cassandra is the choice here. Cassandra's a pretty good protagonist. In fact, that's one of the highlights I got about this story, is that Cassandra is a good character. When it comes to the actual story, it's all about the war, and you're a mercenary, so you're working for both sides, and some other Greek mythology icons and legends show up here, and that's cool and all. The story, I don't really got much issue with the story. And something else I don't really got any issues with is the presentation. I think AC Odyssey is a very good looking game with solid character models, great looking environments, and a pretty stable frame rate. Not really any issues there. See, when it comes to the gameplay, that's where things are really a mixed bag. It feels like for everything that they get right with the gameplay, they get something wrong. The gameplay really is a continuation from Assassin's Creed Origins, where they drop you into this large, and I mean really large, open environment with just tons upon tons of missions. Missions, objectives, targets to take out, things to climb, collectibles. Like, there is just a ton of stuff in this open world. It is one of the largest open worlds I've ever seen in a game, and it is just full, and I really do mean full of content. There is stuff all over the place. But what are these missions and objectives? It's usually taking out targets, getting into fights with them. Sometimes it's ship battles. Sometimes it is stealth, and you got to take everyone out silently. Sometimes it's trailing. Sometimes it's collecting something for someone. Sometimes you even get to fight an actual mythical monster. There's a bunch of different objectives here, but This game gets so grindy. It is unbelievably grindy. It is extremely repetitive. It feels never ending. It's needlessly long, incredibly bloated, and it just felt like the game would go on and on and on, and my patience and sanity would slowly decline and decline. You know, some people look at all this content, all these missions, collectibles, objectives, all this, and they go, wow, there's so much content. This is amazing. The thing is, though, all of this content, it's all incredibly similar. It all really just kind of blends together. A lot of it feels cookie cutter or almost randomly generated to an extent. It's all just so similar. It gets mind numbing, and the game just gets incredibly repetitive. Like, once you've done maybe a few hours of missions in this game, you've seen just about all the variety when it comes to the missions of this game. And they'll just send you from location to go get something, kill someone. And it just feels like this game is never ending. Like, once you finish the main storyline, they're still giving you new storylines to do to get like a secret ending. And after like 50 or so hours, I finally just gave up. I said enough is enough. I need to move on to something else. And you know, this game actually has a ton of good elements to it. Like, the stealth is actually solid, the movement is decent, the parkouring is okay, the combat, dare I say, it's one of the best combat systems I've seen in an Assassin's Creed game. It's satisfying, it's fun, you get into some engaging fights, but it just gets so old. It gets so repetitive. You get so tired of fighting anything, being sneaky, like, it just gets old. The game did not need to be anywhere near this long or expansive or massive, and it's because Ubisoft was trying to sell this like a live service or something. I don't know. They wanted me to play just forever, it seems. And you know, some people probably be like, oh, well, the game's stupid long. Just ignore all the side content. Just do the main missions. You're probably done in like half that time, and it ends before it gets repetitive. Oh, I wish. I wish I could do that, but this game instead has some of the greediest, most evil level locking I've ever seen in a game. Basically, what the game will do is it'll make the next main mission like 2 or 3 levels above your character, and if you go into that mission and you're not at least that level, you'll die in like one hit and you can't kill anything. They make it virtually impossible. So you gotta grind out a couple side missions. You know, you complete one, you get like 10k XP. Okay, 10k XP, that's a lot. How many do I need to level up? 100,000? Are you serious? Yeah, you need to level up like 2 or 3 times, and you need like 100k to level up. You got 10,000 from a side mission. You're gonna be grinding a lot, buddy. And the only way to get around this is, I'm not even kidding, using real world money, buying the time savers, where instead of getting like 10k XP for a side mission, you'll get like 30 or 40. So then you only have to do a couple side missions to go on to the next main mission. So you can either pay real world money or grind on these just shitty side missions. That's really your choice. Ubisoft really did that. This game, it should be good. It should be really good, in fact. It has a bunch of great elements, but unfortunately, it's a grindy, repetitive, boring slog that feels incredibly mind-numbing for most of the time, and it just feels like it never ends. And with that, you know, I just can't really recommend AC Odyssey unless you think all the side content's good. Then you probably love how much there is. But for me, no, I didn't really enjoy most of my time with the game. It's just a very middling experience. And here we have Assassin's Creed Valhalla releasing in 2020. I got this game when it came out. It was the first PS5 game I got along with Demon's Souls. And it was one of my most played games of 2020. But does that mean it was a really great time and I loved it? Well, yes and no. So this game takes place in a totally different setting from all the other Assassin's Creeds. It's around 870 AD, and it recounts a fictional story of the Viking expansions into the British Islands. And it sees you playing as a male or female Eivor, a Viking raider who, while attempting to establish a new clan in England, becomes embroiled in this centuries-old conflict between our favorite, the Assassin Brotherhood, and the Templar Order. And you know, the plot of this game, it's actually pretty decent. It's a unique setting, it's an interesting tale, and there's some good characters here. I really did like Basim. Basim was an interesting character, and you know, now he's the star of Assassin's Creed Mirage, so I guess Ubisoft thought so also. But the story and the plot, characters, all that, I think was actually pretty decent. Now, when it comes to this game's gameplay and formula, it is similar to Odyssey, but there are some tweaks. You are still dropped into a massive, and I really do mean just massive open world. One of the very biggest open worlds a video game has ever seen, and yeah, you're told the world's your oyster. Here's just a bunch of shit to do. Go do whatever you want. When it comes to like what you're doing in this game, though, you're getting into a lot of fights. Most of the game is fights. There are plenty of fights in this game, and the combat, it's even better than Odyssey's. It's some of the very best combat the series has ever seen. It's solid. It's got a good impact. It's satisfying. It's fun, and there's plenty of enemy types and bosses, the combat gets a thumbs up from me. And then, you know, sometimes you'll be stealthy in this game, but you're really not stealthy in Valhalla. I mean, you're a Viking. The Vikings weren't exactly known for being sneaky, but stealth is kind of an option. I mean, it's very basic. There's really not much with the stealth. Or you're exploring around, and again, there's plenty to see in this world, plenty of missions. You do get into ship combat. And that's something Ubisoft has really nailed down. They could probably do it in their sleep when it comes to the ship combat. It's solid enough. But, you know, the big question of the gameplay is how grindy is it? And really, how's the pacing of the game? Like, the combat can be excellent. The ship combat can be great. The movement can be nice. The world can be interesting to explore. The game can look fantastic, which it actually does. This game does look fantastic. But if the game is as mind-numbing and boring and grindy as Odyssey's, I don't think it's going to be a very good game. Now, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it is not as grindy as Odyssey. It is nowhere near as grindy as Odyssey with the XP, and the XP practices from Odyssey are basically gone. But what you have here is still one of the longest video games I've ever completed. There is just too much game here. Like, I know some people might be like, really? Too much game? That seems like a silly complaint. No, there is too much game here. I played through this game and I only did the main content. I did very, very little side content. I did basically no grinding. I didn't like the grinding or the side content. I did none of that shit in Odyssey. I'm sticking to just the main missions. I'm sticking to just the main story and taking over the territories, which is the main story. I took over all of the territories, completed all the main missions, and it took me, no exaggeration, nearly 70 hours. Yes, 70 hours. Like, that is just stupidly long. In this game, it just is not able to keep that pace or stay interesting. And don't get me wrong, the gameplay is actually good. Again, the combat's fun. The raids are actually pretty cool. I liked exploring, and I did enjoy my time plenty of times with this game, but it just goes on and on and on. The game has a lot of good things going for it, but unfortunately the length, the pacing, just being able to keep me interested, invested, and engaged, it's not able to do that for this long. If the game was maybe 30 or 40 or even 50 hours shorter, oh, it would be so much better. This would be a much better game. I'd say this is one of the best Assassin's Creed games, but unfortunately with the length, this game is just decent to alright, and it's a really hard sell. It is hard for me to recommend this game because of the length. Do you have 70 to 80 hours that you want to set aside for Assassin's Creed? 2 full work weeks? And this is just the main story, by the way. If I did the side content, it'd be over 100 hours of gameplay. Like, sure, that might sound amazing, over 100 hours of gameplay, but I don't know if this is over 100 hours of gameplay you want. It's not Persona 5, that's all I'm gonna say. The game just goes on way too long for its own good, but game is solid gameplay, solid mechanics, good presentation. It's just, man, it just never ends, does it? Again, not a bad game, but man, I just can't recommend it. I've never seen a single player game disrespect someone's time so much. Like, it's just not worth it. And here we have Assassin's Creed Mirage releasing in 2023. And again, another shout out to Ubisoft for hooking me up with this game. I really do appreciate it. Now, Mirage, for the unfamiliar, was actually originally going to be a DLC for Valhalla, but I guess it got bigger than they expected. And yeah, it became its own game, and that's why it has Basim, who was a very important character in Valhalla. Now he's the main character, Mirage. It takes place beforehand, and it's about him in Baghdad. And the game is much more of a throwback to the original Assassin's Creed games, you know, AC1, 2, and Brotherhood. All the fancy stuff from Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla, it's all taken away. It's all stripped back, it's scaled down, and it's much more focused and, like I said, in line with the original AC games. And you know, I think the game's actually pretty solid. Does it have some shortcomings? Does it have some issues that were issues all the way back in those original AC games? Yeah, it does. But I still think it is an enjoyable game. And if you're someone who really loves the original Assassin's Creed games, this might be the game to check out because it really is like those older ones. So like I mentioned, the game is about Basim in Baghdad, and it's about him joining the Brotherhood, which it's still called the Hidden Ones in this game, but it's about him joining the Hidden Ones and taking out some corrupt, evil, vile human beings, and really that's the story. Now, I won't lie to you, the story, the characters, and the general plot to this game is very middling. Like, the premise is very Assassin's Creed. You've seen it a ton of times. If you've played really any Assassin's Creed game from like 2008 to like 2016, you've basically seen this. So it's not exactly imaginative or innovative, but how are the characters? Unfortunately, the characters are incredibly middling as well. I didn't really care much for Basim. I mean, he's okay, but I don't know, man. I just didn't really find him all that interesting. I thought he was more interesting, honestly, in Valhalla than his own game, which is just kind of sad. He was just like okay at best, and everyone else is just kind of forgettable. At least the setting is actually pretty cool. I think Baghdad is a really unique setting, and yeah, it does look a little bit like other Assassin's Creed games in terms of, how the setting looks, but it certainly is different. But something that's not different? The gameplay. The gameplay is very much like the old AC games. You're not dropped into this massive, sprawling open world with a bunch of quests and dialogue options and RPG elements. No, this is a much more focused 360 era open world game where you have one location. It's a decent size. You got a couple targets to take out. Those are your main missions. There's some side missions here or there. There's a few collectibles, and really that is it. It's not this massive, just overwhelming open world that takes eons to travel through with just tons of characters and quest lines and things to see and things to do and just quest upon quest upon quest. No, that is not Mirage. There's like 5 targets in this game. You'll do some investigations to get, info on those targets, who they are, where they're at, and then you'll take out those targets and the game's pretty much done after that. That's the main loop, is you get your targets, you take out the targets. There's a few things to see in the open world. There's a collectible or two, and of course there's some side contracts you can do, but the game really focuses on, just the main missions, just taking out those targets, and it's actually very welcoming. It's actually kind of refreshing to see a game just be really condensed, compact, and just focused. It's like how the old AC games were, where the focus really was just on the main missions and they didn't try to have this just amazingly large open world. It really was just about a set of missions, a couple targets to take out, and the game's story. And that's why I think this is refreshing. Not every game needs to be absolutely massive and take like 80 to 100 hours. I very much welcome a 10 to 15 hour game, especially if it's quality versus quantity here, which I think it is. I think most of the missions are very solid in this game. Have you been there and done this before in an Assassin's Creed game? Yes, for almost all the missions. There's not exactly any originality here, but at least the missions are enjoyable, and I think that the game ends before it gets repetitive. Now, when it comes to what Basim himself can do, it's very much like Altair or Ezio. He can run around, he can parkour, he can be stealthy, whether that's hiding or social stealth where you're in a crowd. He gets into combat and fights with a sword or two, and then you have your gear also to help you. Now, when it comes to this game's combat, it's very much like the old games. It's not great, it's a little clunky, and honestly, you should just run away because stealth kind of is the focus here. And the stealth, I think it's actually pretty decent here. I feel like it's a little better than the old games. The social stealth is not as prevalent here as the original game or two, but it's still here. The stealth is much more focused on just staying out of line of sight, and I think it's fine. When it comes to the parkour, man, this really is like the old games, where it is just as finicky and just as annoying sometimes as the old games look. For the most part, it's fine. Like 85% of the time, it's fine. But that 15%, it will be awkward, it will be clunky, you'll be trying to do something, and Basim will just not do what you were trying to do. I've been spotted, I've failed missions, I've gotten killed because of just the finicky controls. And that's just kind of how Assassin's Creed is always going to be when it comes to the parkouring. It's very evident that it doesn't really matter what year we're in, the parkour is going to be finicky, but I think it's fine for the most part. I think the world, like in terms of the open world itself, it's nothing too special. I think the level design is decent. There are some empty areas that I think I could do without, but I think it's all right. I like the size of it. There isn't a ton of variety here, but I like the city. I like the wanted mechanic that comes back as well. That's fun. And as a throwback to those old games, I think it's actually really solid. You could totally convince me this is just a remaster of one of those 360 games. You could tell me this is low-key a remake of the first game, and I'd believe you. I wouldn't be surprised if they do make a remake of the first game using this game's assets, because it actually does look very good. I think it looks very good for the most part, outside of some shoddy animation and some weird-looking NPCs. But for the most part, yeah, I actually think it does look quite good. And the music actually really slaps. Like, they got the original composer. The music is just really good in this game. I'm going to give some major props to the music. It's been forever since I heard good AC music. This is some good shit. So yes, the game is a good throwback to those 360 games. However, it is current year. Is the game actually good nowadays? This is where I think you might get some mixed answers. Look, if you love the original Assassin's Creed games, I think you're going to like this game. This game, I will be honest though, it does not really improve or innovate or evolve those original games formulas. Like, it very much plays like the original games played, which might be a good thing for plenty of people who just want another game in the style of the original ones. But if if you got super tired of the Ubisoft formula or the Assassin's Creed formula, you know, they just really did run it into the ground. If you're tired of that formula still, and you're looking for something even a little different from the series, you are not going to find it here. This game, I cannot stress enough how much it plays like the old games, which totally hold up. They totally hold up and are still actually great games, but I'm just saying, if you're sick of that Ubisoft formula, this game is not going to change your mind. I don't think it's the game for you. It plays it incredibly safe. It's probably one of the safest releases of 2023. It's just a very, very safe game. But as someone who does like the original games and does like the formula, I enjoyed this game. I like this game for what it was. Is it a fantastic game? Is it mind-blowing? Am I going to be able to recall much from it 3 months from now? No, I don't think so. Does it stand up to Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood and Revelations and that? No, I don't think it does that either. But what you still have is an enjoyable, decent open world experience that I think lapsed Assassin's Creed fans might like. But I'm sure plenty of people are going to shit on the game because it's like the old ones, even though that's kind of the point. I recommend this game. Obviously, there are a few caveats here. Your personal tastes really do change my recommendation for it or not, but I do recommend it in the end. At least the game isn't like 100 hours, so thank you. But then we have Assassin's Creed Origins releasing in 2017. Now, Assassin's Creed Origins was the first game in this new action RPG style, where it was going to be more like Witcher or Skyrim or Fallout or really any of these big action RPGs. It was going to be much less like the Assassin's Creed games of old, and yeah, it really was the start to this new series. And honestly, of the newer series, I think this is the best Assassin's Creed game. And you know, there are things that I think Odyssey and Valhalla and even Mirage do that are better than Origins, but when everything comes together, I really do think Origins is the best of the modern Assassin's Creed games. So this game takes place in Egypt around 45 BC, making it what I'm pretty sure is the oldest Assassin's Creed game, and it's about Bayek. And the plot sees Bayek and his wife Aya seeking revenge for the murder of their son and eventually creating the Hidden Ones, which would be the forerunners to the Assassin Brotherhood. And they fight the Order of the Ancients, who in turn would be the forerunners to the Templar Order. So this game, like the title implies, really is the origin story to Assassin's Creed, to the Brotherhood, to the Templars. It really is an origin story. And you know, I think it's actually pretty decent. I think it's a cool origin story. It's cool to see where everything gets started here. I think Bayek is a pretty decent to good protagonist. I like him. I like his wife Aya. You know, they've got pretty good motivation and a lot of emotion is here. And I just think his entire story and arc is actually pretty decent. Is he one of the very best protagonists the AC series has ever seen? No, I don't think so, but I still think he's actually pretty good. And I think the setting is actually really solid as well. There's not a ton of games in Egypt. I really do like it here. I think there's a lot of variety in the setting, and the world itself, it's pretty dense. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, if you played Odyssey or Valhalla, then you'll feel right at home here because those games really did base a lot off of Origins, where you're dropped into a big open environment, but there's leveling up, there's much more in-depth combat where there's actually like hitboxes, special moves, there's leveling up where you get like actual experience and stat increases, much more than the older games. There's a bunch of loot in this game. You can really customize Bayek and his loot, you know, and then the open world itself, there's a bunch of activities, obviously the main quest, but then there's just tons of side activities here, some stuff that hadn't come back to Assassin's Creed in forever, like the ship combat or underwater exploration is here. There's just a bunch of quests you really get here, and of course all the collectibles, a bunch of junk you can collect, climbing up on tall things, the typical Assassin's Creed stuff. But this open world really is sprawling. There's even some new elements here that really play to Egypt's strength. You know, you actually get to explore tombs and pyramids. You get to raid bandit hideouts. There's a gladiatorial arena. There's chariot racing. There's even a bunch of puzzles you get throughout the game. I actually think that the game really does take advantage of the Egypt setting. I think it's decently well designed. It's interesting. It's not stupidly large, and there's actually some variety here. And you know, a bunch of objectives in this game can be tackled in different ways, and it takes advantage of the Egyptian environment, you know, hiding in the environment to be stealthy. This game, it does have stealth. It's not as advanced, I'd say, as like the older Assassin's Creed games. It is rather basic here, but you can actually go about these objectives in different ways. You can run in and just start killing everybody with all the special moves in the combat, but you can totally be stealthy. You can parkour around a little. It's not too advanced, but it works. It's fine. I don't really got any issues with it. But when it comes to my favorite part of Origins, it's that the game is not stupidly large. You know, I talked for ages about how big Odyssey and Valhalla are and just how long they take to beat. Origins is not like that. Don't get me wrong, it's still a relatively large action RPG with tons of side content that you can get lost in for dozens upon dozens of hours doing just tons of quests, getting all the collectibles and all that, but Origins actually just ends. The game is around 20 or so hours if you stick to really just the main content, do some side missions here or there, and you don't really have to grind in it either. Maybe once or twice I think I grind on like a side mission, but the side missions are not as cookie cutter and basic as they were in Odyssey and Valhalla, where they went for the quantity versus quality. Here, yeah, it still kind of feels like that, but the quantity is not insane like those games. The game actually respects your time. It isn't stupidly long, and I can actually really compliment that. The pacing, the structure, it's actually quite solid. The game just ends. It doesn't take an eternity, and it's nice. Like, you actually get to really enjoy the game a lot more because it isn't just stretched so thin that it's as thin as like a cheese stick or paper. You really get to enjoy what the game gives you. Take the ship combat for an example. I think the ship combat is pretty good in Origins. I think it's pretty good in Odyssey and Valhalla, but in Odyssey and Valhalla you do so much of it that it just gets tedious, it gets boring, and I don't enjoy it by the end of it. Here, I can actually enjoy it because it's pretty sporadic, it doesn't take an eternity, and you don't do a shit ton of it. It didn't become a chore. It didn't become mind-numbing. I enjoyed it. Like, don't get me wrong, Odyssey and Valhalla, they totally had better combat than Origins, but those games, it just goes on for so long and you do so much combat that it just gets so old, and I don't enjoy it as much as Origins, which might sound silly to say, but I like that the game is shorter. I like that it's more compact, it's to the point, and it's just a more enjoyable experience. Sure, you're not going to be on the game for like a month, but quality versus quantity here, I'm going to always take the quality. And I think this game actually still has a lot going for it even nowadays. The game looks pretty great, it's got a solid story, a good main character, a great open world, ton of stuff to do, and it ends. It actually just ends. You are going to see the end of this game. Now, is it everyone's cup of tea? Absolutely not. I know plenty of people played this and went, what the hell is this? I want it to be like the old ones, or they like the later ones that take an eternity to finish, and that's fine. I'm not telling you what Assassin's Creed to play, but in my opinion, Assassin's Creed Origins is one of the best Assassin's Creed games, and it's the best of these modern games, and I can recommend it the most. And so that's it for me. That's it for this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. Let me know your favorite Assassin's Creed down below, or if you want to see me rank all of the games in the series, which I'll do eventually. I'll get to it eventually. I think the people want to see that. But yeah, if you made it to this part of the video, comment Hamtaro. That's it really. So hope everyone has a good one.